Hello, everybody, and welcome to Diverse Talks. My name is Ria Renouf, and I will be your host for this edition of Diverse Talks. And joining me today is Nicolas Tellez-España, or Nick for short.
Yes, please.
Nick for short is the manager of the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership, which is convened by Diversity Community Resources Society. He has been with DIVERSEcity since May 2023, working to support skilled immigrants and help them succeed in Canada, especially when it comes to labor market integration. Nick, thank you so much for joining me for this Diverse Talks.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to get right into it. And I know that there's some folks who don't quite understand what it means to have your foreign credentials recognized. And who better to explain that to us than Nick? So what's that all about?
Yeah, I know for sure. So yeah, a lot of people are confused sometimes when they care about foreign credential recognition, or FCR for short. But essentially that is the process by which skilled newcomers into Canada get their, past experiences and certifications recognized to be able to enter the labor market and use the skills that they have so that they can, better themselves and the communities where they live.
Foreign credential recognition, I've seen it change so much in the last decade. But what is it looking like now in 2025? What does it look like to have your foreign credentials recognized?
I think that you're right. It has changed significantly from the early days, but it is still a patchwork of different policies and regulations and legislation, because labor market attachment is regulated provincially, but immigration is regulated federally. There is a disconnect between the two. But right now, at least in British Columbia, we have the Foreign Credential Recognition Act, which has streamlined some of that process for newcomers in being able to, get rid of some of the bureaucratic red tape, like extra language testing, for example, or, different fees for, residents versus people that are just starting off and coming to Canada. So still a little murky, I would say, but there is a little bit more clarity with the legislation. And hopefully through more advocacy, which DIVERSEcity is very good at doing, we can push that needle forward again to ensure that newcomers are better integrated into the labor market using the skills that they have obtained back home.
And if I'm not mistaken, that act it's pretty recent, right?
Yes, the act came into force, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2024 that it came fully into force in July. And it does look at unregulated professions in British Columbia. So the more regulated professions such as healthcare and teaching and some other ones are not part of that. But it really focuses on, like I said, reducing the bureaucratic red tape around how to get your credentials recognized, right? As you know, when people are immigrating into Canada and with our point system, individuals need to do some type of, English testing or French language skill testing, as well as have the credentials recognized to see if they meet the qualifications and the scoring of those points. And it used to be the case in British Columbia that a lot of the times newcomers would have to redo those processes again to be able to, get their credentials recognized depending on the field they're trying to get into. So the Act aims to streamline that process and ensure that people have, a fair access to the process overall.
Now, when it comes to making it easier for folks, because I've heard, for instance, we don't have enough folks working in X or Y or Z. So it sounds to me like, based on what you're describing, that it ultimately is a benefit to making access to foreign credentials easier for everyone. Obviously, not just the person, but for the companies and for the groups perhaps that they're working for. So what are some of those benefits?
In terms of getting your credentials recognized?
Yeah, in terms of helping people, streamlining that process and making it easier.
Well, I think that, if you look at British Columbia in particular, and you look at the BC labor market outlook from last year, which projected about 1 million job openings in the next decade, about 2/3 of that was going to be, just from immigration. And they're all skilled jobs, right? It's in teaching, it's in education, education, teaching, healthcare, just a variety of other ones. And if we're bringing in people, for the purposes of, growing our economy and growing our communities, then it makes absolute sense to ease the foreign credential recognition process. So folks who have their degrees and professions back home are able to seamlessly, or as seamlessly as possible, integrate into the economy, into the labor market, and then offer their skill set to, residents, Canadian citizens, future communities down the road. So it is, I think, overall a good benefit for the province as well as for, municipalities to encourage their representatives across the board to ease the foreign credential application process for the newcomers. Right?
So it's not just about obviously employing people or helping, build our labor market, but also just the beautiful trickle effect of, growing our communities and welcoming a diverse range of people.
Yes, I think there's also a part of it that it talks about dignity and integrity, right? When you're wanting to create a community that is welcoming and inclusive, which is the purpose of the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership, for example, we are trying to do that in all aspects of life for a newcomer, right? It's not just about getting you the right settlement support, but it's also about making sure that the knowledge and the skills that you have obtained back home are valued and that are put to the service of the community where you want to, settle and make your new home.
That's huge. So it's a very much a 360 opportunity. It's not just the working opportunity. It's not just, getting employers, folks they need to carry out, whatever duties it is. It really is robust community.
Yes. And I think, sometimes people downplay the importance of work, but for a lot of individuals, work is a source of, meaning, it's a source of purpose. And so when you have these, unnecessary barriers to employment or to foreign credential recognition in this case, you end up further marginalizing newcomers, putting them in the outsides of the labor market, sometimes doing work that they are unqualified for potentially or overqualified for. And then in that process, they feel a sense of lack of value potentially, because the promise of Canada has not been fully realized to them in the process of settlement.
Yeah, that can be really hard if obviously you want to try and contribute, but it's not what you trained to do. And that can be really challenging for sure. DIVERSEcity obviously has this amazing program. Can you just share with us, I know you talked about some of the things that take place in that program, but I feel like DIVERSEcity and the LIP program, it's a great connector for people to be able to integrate and to, find their way here in a new place like Canada. What are some of the things that the LIP program does? Yeah,
well, the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership is a convener of different stakeholders in the city that aim to strategize to make the city more welcoming and inclusive for newcomers. So as the convener, we don't provide direct services to newcomers, but rather we facilitate the cross-referral of services from other stakeholders. We facilitate, larger conversations about how to streamline services, how to make sure that the city infrastructure, as well as other service providers, are, nimble enough to act in response to growing issues in the newcomer community and the overall community in Surrey as well. But of particular importance, I think, where DIVERSEcity has really, been a trailblazer in foreign credential recognition is the partnership that we established with Coast Capital, part of the Coast Capital Credential Recognition Program for newcomer women. It is now on its third iteration, and it has supported over 100 women re-enter the labor market with the skills and the knowledge that they obtained back home. Really, that conversation stemmed, a few years ago, prior to me being at DIVERSEcity. But really with the understanding that, if we are able to offer just a little bit of seed funding for, in this case, women to get their credentials recognized, they can then take that, money and then multiply it further because the investment down the road is just going to pay off. And I think that's something that we don't discuss enough about foreign credential recognition, which is the prohibitive cost associated with it, right? It's not just the time that comes along with it, but really, it is quite a lot of money.
As an example, and I know it probably differs with each occupation, but is it fair to say in the tens of thousands of dollars for some people?
I would multiply that by 5.
Holy smokes!
It really depends. Economic and Social Development Canada released its last report on foreign credential recognition before the pandemic in 2019. And at that time, they estimated anywhere, I think upward of $10,000 for foreign credential recognition.
Wow.
Now, we did an internal survey at DIVERSEcity last year with our, Coast Capital participants, and they reported anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000 in foreign credential recognition costs because it's not just the actual paperwork that you need to fill out, but, there's examinations that you need to take in, challenge exams. For some folks, it might be the fact that they need to redo part of their degree or be able to come back and work in that field. So those costs add up. And, we're particularly talking about newcomer women, there is hidden costs as well, right? If you're a mother, there's childcare to be taken care of, right? There is the running of a household. And so those are very gender specific costs that are sometimes not quantified in the economic makeup of how when they're running these tests, right?
So that's why it's so important to not only have the supports that, the local immigration partnership is able to provide by connecting women, but also the advocacy portion. So I think in terms of what can we do, whether it's through an organization like DIVERSEcity or just as a community to help, what kind of advocacy should we be doing to make these changes so that it's a much more smoother and less like a lower barrier process for credential recognition?
That's a really good question. I think advocacy has to be at the forefront of, moving to kneel for a credential recognition, particularly in British Columbia. I can't speak for the rest of Canada because, of course, foreign credentials and immigration is federally regulated, and then foreign credentials vary by province. But in British Columbia, with the precedent of the current Foreign Credentials Recognition Act, I think there's a lot of room to further push that by connecting with your MLAs, connecting with city council, and talking about not just the economic benefits of foreign credential recognition, but also the social and inclusive benefits that can create for the communities where newcomers are choosing to settle and make their homes as well.
Yes.
Sure.
And I do want to go back to some of these success stories, and they're probably very anecdotal, but I'm sure that you've seen a lot of folks come through the local immigration partnership, the program. Are there some success stories that maybe stand out to you that you're willing to share with us?
Yeah. So again, with the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership, no direct services, but with the Coast Capital Credential and Program for Newcomer Women, we have seen incredible success. We had a participant from Chile a few years ago who had just come, had a child, her husband had moved, she was a pharmacist, and she was trying to find the best way to re-enter the labor market. She heard about her program, just word of mouth about, the fact that they could get a little bit of grant money to initiate that process. So they applied, they connected with one of the employment specialists here at DIVERSEcity to help them navigate through the process, understand all of the paperwork that is associated with it. And then once they were ready to actually move forward with the challenge and exams, we were able to cover some of those fees. And then they were able to successfully pass that. And now they're a practicing professional, they're back into the labor market. And they feel this huge sense of accomplishment and just ownership of their new life here because, they feel like Canada, and through DIVERSEcity in this case, has really made an investment in their life that now has endless returns, not just for her family, but also for the people that she gets to serve at the pharmacy, right? And be able to connect with them and offer her services and her expertise in a way that aligns with her values, but also with the larger community.
That is amazing. That's awesome. Now, if anyone is looking to learn more about foreign credentials through that DIVERSEcity lens, what's the best way to get in touch? Yeah,
I would say that you check out the website, the tcrs.ca, and then under employment programs, you will see the Coast Capital Credential Program for Newcomer Women. It is a very beautiful program. I had the honor to be able to run the program for about 2 years. And you can connect directly through the website. There is a link there that you can send a submission form to if you're interested in applying for the program. Or you can connect with me, and I can also direct you to the right folks that run that program now as well. But it is all housed under the employment program services here at DIVERSEcity.
That's amazing. Now, I know we covered quite a bit of ground, Nick, but if there is one takeaway that you'd like to leave our viewers with about foreign credential recognition, what would that be?
I think that thinking about foreign credential recognition beyond the economic benefits and really looking at how this can impact the whole person and the community by extension, right? The economic benefits are arguably probably one of the best known ones, but I think, peeling the layers of that to understand that when you give and you invest in people, they will take that investment and then create so much more, with that. And the returns might not be quantifiable economically necessarily, though they certainly can be, but it can also be seen directly into how the community benefits from that skill, that knowledge of the people who have done a lot of hard work and then are able to take their gifts and bring them into our communities here.
So well said. Nick, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Diverse Talks. We'll see you in the next one.